Welcome to one of our Mass Comm Week events. Really excited to have you all here. My name is Dale Blasingame. I'm an assistant professor of practice in the digital media innovation sequence in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication here at Texas State. I know many of y'all from my advanced social media and analytics class, but welcome to those of y'all who are here in person with us on Zoom, and to those of y'all who are watching this later. Thank you for taking the time to take part in Mass Comm Week. Really honored to have Chris Ferris here with us today, who is going to be spending the next hour with you talking about all things digital strategy and how 2020 has thrown a nice little wrinkle into a lot of companies' plans. So let me first introduce Chris. He is the Vice President of Digital Strategy for Pierpont Communications. He drives value for his clients by developing strategies that support their overall business goals and helps organizations embrace new digital technologies to meet evolving customer expectations, including online ads, SEO, website design, social media, and analytics. Chris earned his master's in communication at the University of Pennsylvania and holds a PhD in health policy, which I definitely want to know how that came about, at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston. When he's not at work, Ferris spends his time as a lecturer at the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University, where he teaches a self-designed digital marketing course for business grad students. So Chris, thank you for joining us. And like any good professor, you have slides prepared to go over. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a while, and then we will we'll join back for a Q&A.
Great. Well, thanks for the nice introduction, Dale. And it's really nice to meet everybody virtually. Looking forward to some questions at the end of my little talk. I'm really honored to be invited to Mass Communication Week and to see all these faces popping up on my Zoom screen. I do teach a class at Rice University to MBA students, and I had to pivot in the spring from in-person teaching, which I love, to remote teaching, which I initially did not love, but I'm coming to grips with it. And I think by the end of the semester, I'd kind of figured it out. So what you're getting today is sort of a very abbreviated version of one of the lectures that I give to my MBA students. I was asked to focus more on social media today, so I'm going to talk for a few minutes broadly about how I approach digital marketing and how I talk about it to my students and also to my clients that I work with at Pierpont. And then I'll do a quick, like 25-minute quick rundown of how we approach social media for our clients. And then I'll take a break and we'll open up to questions. Dale, you asked how I wound up with a PhD in health policy. For about 15 years, I worked in the Texas Medical Center. There, I worked at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital for a while, and then I moved to Texas Children's Hospital. And I actually started doing PR at St. Luke's when I first moved to Houston around 2000. And then I quickly pivoted over to the digital side. I thought that that's where the future was. So I still have some PR DNA in my body, but I primarily do digital now. And anyway, while I was working at those hospitals, my wife was getting her PhD. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of interesting. And I had worked on health policy when I lived in Washington, D.C. in the 1990s. And so I applied to the program and I got in, and I just sort of chipped away at it over the course of 10 years. While I was working in the Texas Medical Center, so it was applicable to my jobs. And once you start a PhD, you kind of feel like, well, I've come this far, I might as well finish it. So I did. So y'all don't have to call me Dr. Ferris. I only make my kids call me Dr. Dad. That's it. So with that, I will jump into my slideshow and we'll get started. All right, so like I said, today I'm going to talk about digital marketing and social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Ferris Online. My Twitter feed is pretty all over the place. I talk about digital marketing, obviously, quite a bit, but I also talk about soccer and football and politics. So if you're interested in any or all of those things, follow me on Twitter. If you want to just make a more formal connection with me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn at, I'm just Chris Ferris. And if you do ask to connect with me, please mention that you were part of this lecture today, or if you watch it in the future, mention that this is how you got to know me. I get a lot of requests from LinkedIn from people that I don't know, and I usually decline them. So if you're somebody who attended this lecture, just say, hey, Chris, I saw your lecture during Mass Comm Week. So please let me follow you, and I will happily accept. So this is my fancy schmancy graphic that I use both for our clients and in my class. And this is how we approach digital marketing strategy with our clients and how I explain it to my class at Rice. When you start talking about digital strategy, you should always try to tie it back to the center of this circle, which is your business goals. You'd be surprised how many people come to Pierpont and they say, we need a Facebook page, or we need a new website, or we need LinkedIn ads. And they already got in their mind what kind of digital marketing they think they need to do for their business or their organization or their nonprofit. And what I always tell them to do is to just stop, take a breath, and let's step back and say, okay, you think you need some part of digital marketing for your business. Awesome, you probably do, but let's figure out what you actually do really need and how does it tie back to your business goals. Are you trying to get more customers? Are you trying to position yourself for your company for acquisition? Are you trying to have better customer service? Are you trying to get people to schedule appointments? Are you trying to get people to apply to your school, right? These are all very different goals. And so I always try to get our clients to step back and really think about what their business goals are. And that will help us determine what we need to do in terms of digital marketing. So usually we start with the website. Almost everything you do online tends to drive people back to your organization's website. So first thing we do is say, how is your website performing? Because it's not worth spending a lot of time on social media or buying digital ads if when you get people to your website, it's not a good experience. So that could mean it loads slow. It looks crappy on a mobile device. It's not secure. It's hard for people to find what you want them to do. So I always try to make sure that before we burn a lot of calories doing all these other things, make sure your website, again, assuming that's the fundamental part of your business, make sure your website is performing as optimally as possible. Then we shift to SEO. Okay, we've got this good website. And really when you're reviewing the website, the SEO is part of it as well. SEO, I assume you guys know, means search engine optimization. That means how high your web pages rank in primarily Google, because Google is the biggest search engine in the world. How high do you rank for certain keywords in Google? And one thing I always emphasize to people is that Google doesn't rank websites, it ranks web pages. Now, of course, your website is made up of a collection of a bunch of web pages, but Google doesn't index a website. It indexes each individual page, and then it ranks each individual page. So people say, well, I want my website to be #1 in Google. Well, first of all, that's not possible unless you're Nike or Amazon or Apple or things like that. So let's figure out what are the keywords that we want people, when they search for, to try to see a page in your website show up high in the Google search results. So that's step 2. Then we approach social media, which is what we're going to spend most of today talking about. So I'm not going to belabor this one too much, but social media is a key part of any digital marketing strategy. And then lastly, we explore digital ads, which in my view includes email. And that can be display ads, it could be social media ads, it could be Google ads, it could be email. There's all sorts of different ways that you can promote your business or get new followers or whatever your business goals are with paid. And of course, that's how all these social media companies make money. Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, they make money by selling ads. And then all along the way is ongoing analytics. So that's why you see these arrows going around and around and around. There's an old joke that advertisers used to say, back in the Mad Men era of Don Draper, I know half my advertising works. I just don't know which half. And with digital, you can usually actually pretty much tell what's working and what's not. So I always emphasize to businesses and clients, what are your business goals? And then how do we measure success? What does success look like after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Is it more sales? Is it more customers? Is it more foot traffic in your store? Is it more visitors to your website? Whatever it is, let's make sure we have a good way to measure those things and then track them along the way to make sure all the effort we're putting into all this digital marketing is actually leading to the business goals that you're driving toward. All right, I'm going to take a sip and then we're going to jump right into the main meat of this. Okay, quiz time. In the chat, you guys are allowed to chat here, right? Yeah. So in the chat, I would like you to please tell me what you think the most popular brands in the world are on Facebook. So just type in what you think the most popular brands are on Facebook. Just drop it in the chat. Anybody? Nobody wants to guess? Nike, good guess, good guess. Nike is not the most popular worldwide on Facebook. Those are good guesses though. Anybody else? Dove, nope, afraid not. Think worldwide.
Seeing Coca-Cola, Lululemon.
Nope, nope.
Amazon, Walmart.
No, Walmart is the number one in the US. McDonald's,
Zuckerberg?
I don't think so. What was that one?
The Facebook, I forget, is it Zuckerberg or what is it?
Oh, no, he's not a brand, he's a human, although he does seem like a robot sometimes. Facebook, Apple, no, good guesses. Actually, Facebook is technically the most popular brand on Facebook, but I think they don't count. So the number one brand on Facebook worldwide is Samsung. They have 159 million followers on Facebook. Number two is the Real Madrid.
Guess, I think she submitted it privately, but Brittany guessed Samsung. So good job, Brittany.
Oh, I didn't see that, Brittany. Sorry. Maybe she sent it to you, Dale.
Yeah, I think it was sent privately, yeah.
All right, so well done, Brittany. Samsung, good job. Real Madrid is the second most popular brand. Of course, Real Madrid is a soccer club in Spain. They used to have some of the best players in the world. They recently sold off Cristiano Ronaldo. Remember that name. He may or may not come up later in this talk. And then the third one is Coca-Cola. I think somebody said Coca-Cola. So those are the three most popular brands on Facebook. Now, who do you think are the most popular celebrities worldwide on Facebook? You guys can just type in the chat if you want, or if you want to shout out, that's okay. But I prefer the chat better. It's easier for me to see, and then everybody's not yelling. Messi, good guess. You're close. Ronaldo, yes. Cristiano Ronaldo is the most popular celebrity in the world on Facebook. He now plays for Juventus in Italy, and he has 122 million followers. Number two is Shakira, who is actually married to one of Ronaldo's former teammates on Real Madrid. You're detecting a pattern here. Real Madrid is super popular worldwide. Right, PK, very well done. And then number three is Vin Diesel, which I find totally bizarre. Like, I get Ronaldo and Shakira, they're these worldwide brands. Everybody loves football around the world, and Shakira is an international star. But Vin Diesel is the number three celebrity on Facebook, which I find totally strange. But I think it's a reflection of sort of the age group of people who are on Facebook, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. Okay, now by comparison, what are the number one brands on Instagram? Any guesses? And again, this is worldwide. Nobody's going to guess. Okay. Shine Zaful. I don't know that brand. Sorry.
Getting other calls for Nike.
Oh, Netflix, Nike. I think Nike's number two. So the number one brand worldwide on Instagram is the National Geographic, which I find completely heartwarming. People say that social media can be just a toxic wasteland of vitriol and spite, but it really gives me some faith in humanity that the number one brand being followed on Instagram is National Geographic. And then yes, number two is Nike, and number three, once again, is Real Madrid. So, and then the most popular celebrities, once again, it's Ronaldo on Instagram, followed by Ariana Grande and The Rock. So one of the reasons I like to do this is it's kind of a fun icebreaker, and people are often surprised who the most popular brands and people are on these social media channels. But my point of this is that there is some overlap, like Cristiano Ronaldo and Real Madrid appeared on both of these, but the rest did not. And this to me is an example of that every social media channel is a little bit different. People talk about social media as if it's this monolith. There's like this one giant social media thing, and that's not really true. Every social media channel has its own personality, its own kinds of followers, different ways to engage with people. And a lot of businesses are kind of lazy, and they just do the same thing on every channel, or they try to be on every channel, and that's not a good approach. So I don't know if any of y'all saw this meme that popped up earlier this year of Dolly Parton. Everybody loves Dolly Parton. And the reason I show this is because Dolly Parton perfectly encapsulates what I've tried to tell our clients, which is that all of these pictures, it's still Dolly Parton, right? It's still pure Dolly. This is, none of these are counter to the brand of Dolly Parton. But on LinkedIn, she's a little more buttoned up, a little more formal. You know, she's got a more conservative outfit on. On Facebook, she's a little more casual. She's got a Christmas sweater on. On Instagram, she's got, you know, a more artsy black and white photograph. And now Tinder, of course, is not a social media channel that any of our clients would be on. But the idea is that you have to have a slightly different variation on your core brand personality on each social media channel, just like Dolly has illustrated here. Okay, so here is a chart that I got from the Pew Research Center, which is an excellent resource if y'all have never used it. This is the percent of adults who use these social media channels. This blue line here is Facebook. This little dot up here is YouTube. So YouTube is actually used by more adults in the United States than Facebook. So when you're starting a social media strategy, you've got to think about these two right out of the gate. That doesn't mean you have to use Facebook for your social media strategy, but you should think about it. And here's the other one. So everybody else is kind of crowded down here. Here's Instagram, here's Pinterest, here's Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter is around here too. It's hard to see, it's kind of crowded. And then WhatsApp is here too. So if you're trying to reach somebody for your business or your organization or your nonprofit, they're probably going to be on one of these social media channels. But what I find shocking, although it's not really shocking when I start talking to potential clients, is that half of all businesses don't have a social media strategy. That means they're just kind of making it up as they go along. And sometimes you can figure it out and make it work. But I always encourage our clients to focus on a real social media strategy. And part of that strategy is understanding the differences among the different social media channels. So you also need to think about your customer journey when you're deciding what you're going to do on social media. If you're in marketing, you've probably seen something like this. There's sales funnels that look like this too, but this is how I like to think about it. When you're deciding on your social media channel and what you want to do, you need to decide, am I trying to build awareness? Am I trying to build interest? Am I trying to get people to consider my product or my business? Am I trying to get them to purchase? Am I trying to keep them? And do I want to turn them into an advocate? And you might want to be doing all 6 of these. But for each one of these stages, you need to have a really clear idea of how you want to make each of those happen. And there's different ways to do that on all the different social media channels. So this is another thing I take to my clients and show my class is, where are your customers in this journey, and which social media channel fits into each of these? And again, you can do more than one of each on a given social media channel, but have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish based on this little customer journey slide. Okay, as I mentioned, Facebook is the most important one. It has 2.5 billion followers and about 1.6 billion people use it every day, or every month. Sorry, that's monthly users. So if you have a business, kind of regardless of who you're trying to reach, Facebook is probably where you want to start. That doesn't mean you have to have a Facebook page. And in fact, a lot of our clients who are what we call B2B, business to business or companies, we often tell them, you don't probably really need a Facebook page because you're trying to reach other businesses, and businesses don't follow businesses on Facebook. It just doesn't work that way. So for a lot of B2B clients, we try to discourage them from getting on Facebook. Some of them want to do it anyway, and that's fine. And if they make a strong case, that's fine. But Facebook is a good place to start, but it is not a requirement. Instagram has about 1 billion people around the world, a lot of followers. But as you know, most of you are in college, I think, or you're still undergraduates. And so Instagram tends to skew a lot younger than Facebook. Now, there's still people my age. I'm 51. So there's still people my age who are on Instagram, but more people are more active on Instagram who are younger than older. So you need to be aware of that too. And plus, of course, the way you communicate on Instagram is very different. It's entirely visual. There's a little bit of text and some hashtags and stuff, but you're communicating on Instagram very, very differently than you would communicate on Facebook. And you need to understand who's on Instagram and how they interact on Instagram. So just slapping what you put on Facebook on Instagram isn't a good tactic. So again, most Instagram users are under the age of 35. Again, not to say there aren't people my age. There's a few of us who are on Instagram, but this is where the money is. So then there's Twitter. Twitter is a very strange social media channel. It doesn't have nearly as many followers as Facebook, and its monthly users are even far fewer than Instagram. But Twitter punches above its weight because Twitter is the social media drug of choice among journalists. So I understand that a lot of you are studying public relations and PR or journalism. And so if you want to be part of the news conversation as an organization or even as an individual, you've got to be on Twitter. You guys all know the President Trump is effectively governed via tweet. You know, he does press conferences sometimes and he does other things, but effectively he uses Twitter as the way that he communicates. And he's smart about that because he knows that as soon as he puts something out on Twitter, every journalist in the world already follows him on Twitter. And so they're going to retweet it, and CNN will take a screenshot of it and they'll put it up on TV. So Twitter is where you want to be if you are interested in participating in the news conversation. And this little blue check means that you're authorized on Twitter. And journalists make up a quarter of all of the authorized journalists or media organizations make up 24.6% of all the authorized accounts on Twitter. So that tells you what Twitter is primarily used for. It could also be used for customer service. I was in the Schiphol airport in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and they had a big sign or a big screen in the terminal that said, if you have a problem or a question about Schiphol Airport, please tweet us at whatever the Twitter handle is for Schiphol Airport. So a lot of companies are increasingly using Twitter to manage their customer service. YouTube's a tough one because it's the most used social media channel, even more than Facebook these days, because young and old people use YouTube, right? Younger people don't use Facebook as much. My daughter is 18, and when she turned 14, that was when we allowed her to create her own Facebook account. So she created it once and then never logged in again. But she's on YouTube all the time. And so YouTube is is kind of like Instagram, but maybe even more so. It has a much broader reach in terms of age groups and demographics because tons and tons of people use YouTube. The trouble with YouTube is that it's hard to make good videos. Now, it's gotten easier and easier. You know, everybody's got one of these phones that have really nice cameras now. And so you can make and edit a pretty good video yourself these days. But it's hard to break through on YouTube because there's so much and very few people subscribe on YouTube. So YouTube is, it's high reward, but it also takes more effort than a lot of the other social media channels. Here's my fun stat about YouTube. YouTube on mobile alone reaches more 18 to 49-year-olds than any cable network in the US. So YouTube is very powerful. And what's interesting is that most of the views come from mobile devices. So if you want to reach people on mobile with video, obviously YouTube is the place to do it. So LinkedIn, I mentioned a few minutes ago, LinkedIn skews very professional and older and higher income. And again, it's primarily used for businesses to reach other businesses. So it's a B2B channel. It's also used often for recruitment or for job seekers. So if y'all are in college, if you do not yet have a LinkedIn page, you should create one as soon as this lecture is over. And connect with me. I'll be your first connection on LinkedIn, I promise. But LinkedIn is a far more staid, conservative, professional. I talk about it as if it were a conference. So you act on LinkedIn, either as an individual or as a company, like you would act at a conference. You're professional, you're polite, you're eager to meet other people and make connections, but you don't talk about politics. You don't talk about how much you had to drink last night. You talk about things that are professional and of interest to other professionals. And there are about 590 million people on LinkedIn. But again, they tend to skew much more high education, much more high income, and much more, much older. Pinterest is still around. Pinterest has about 335 million monthly users. It also skews a little bit higher in income. And Pinterest is really good because a lot of the people who use Pinterest use it to make purchase decisions. It tends to skew more female than male in terms of user base, and people use it on their mobile devices a lot. So Pinterest is really good for if you're selling retail you're actually selling things like clothing or shoes or jewelry, things like that. It can also be used effectively for interior decorating, furniture, things like that. So Pinterest is really more of a retail channel. Yelp is important if you are a local business in an urban area. It has 178 million users, and there are a lot of super users that take it really seriously. And people still use Yelp. It shows up high in Google search when you search a business. This is primarily for, again, local businesses and urban areas. And it's, again, mostly for restaurants or retail establishments or hotels, bars, things like that. Snapchat is becoming increasingly popular. I'm sure most of you are probably on Snapchat right now while I'm talking to your, snapping with your friends. It has 301 million users and about 210 million daily active users. Again, Snapchat skews really young, and more brands are are setting up their own Snapchat channels to try to communicate and reach younger people. Yeah, so more than half of all internet users age 15 to 25 use Snapchat. So Snapchat skews very, very young. TikTok is the new big player in the social media space. It has 800 million users worldwide, and it is, depending on how you measure it, the fastest growing social media channel in the history of social media. You know, Facebook has had kind of a slow burn. So have all the other ones. Snapchat blew up pretty quickly, but TikTok has grown in popularity really fast. Now, most businesses, in fact, haven't really figured out how to use TikTok for themselves, but I'll give you an example of one that did a nice job. Oh, and more than half or almost half of TikTok users are between the ages of 16 and 24. But TikTok is growing among the older demographic, and I can use my own wife as an example. She doesn't give a crap about Twitter. She's kind of on Instagram. She mostly uses Facebook, but she's increasingly using TikTok. So TikTok is starting to sort of get some traction in older demographics. So you should think of it primarily as a way to reach younger users, but it's creeping up into the older demographics as well, more than Snapchat, I think, will. And then here's an example of how a brand leveraged TikTok. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so more adults are using TikTok. That's what I just said. All right. You guys probably all saw this guy cruising down the freeway in LA with his bottle of cranberry juice on a skateboard, singing along to Fleetwood Mac. Ocean Spray, which was the brand of cranberry juice that he used, took advantage of this and got a whole lot of free publicity out of this TikTok video. So I have no idea if Ocean Spray was active on TikTok before this, but they leveraged this great video of this dude and gave him basically a lifetime supply of cranberry juice, and they got a lot of free publicity out of it. So there's ways to be engaged in social media even if you're not actually active on social media. All right, so here are the things that social media can help you with, whether you're a big business, a small business, a nonprofit, a school, any kind of organization. Helps spread word of mouth. And the nice thing is that when you post something on social media, you control the message. Now, when you are doing PR and you're trying to get a reporter to cover your story or your business or whatever, you can't control what the reporter is going to say about you. If you're a good PR professional, you can manage it pretty well, but you can't control it. On social media, you can control what you say about yourself and try to get the word of mouth to spread in the way that you want it to. You can also target people pretty specifically. I've talked a lot already today about all the different kinds of audiences there are on the different social media channels. And so you can be very particular just with organic social media about who you're reaching. And then if you decide to do paid social media advertising, you can do even more. You can be even more specific about how you target people. You can also give people a really pleasant, rich customer experience. I talked about this when I was at the Schiphol airport, but more and more people, as I said, are going on to social media, particularly places like Twitter or Facebook, to engage with businesses and expect a good customer experience. So if you're setting yourself up in a smart way, you can ensure that your customers or potential customers have a good experience on your social media channels. As I said a minute ago, you can push your content out with really no filter. And so you can tell your own story in your own way, whether as an individual or as a company. And you can also make an emotional connection with people. You'd be surprised how brands like Starbucks or Patagonia, these companies that people have very, very strong connections to, they express their emotional connections on social media, and you can cultivate those and nurture them and keep people coming back for more on your social media channels by sort of cultivating this emotional connection with your brand or your company or organization. So I mentioned Mad Men a few minutes ago. So in the past, when Don Draper and his agency would publish an ad in the newspaper or on TV or on the radio or put up a billboard, they would just sort of sit back and spend the rest of the afternoon drinking. That it's not really how marketing and advertising works anymore. It's far more interactive. And so when you do your social media, you've got to be prepared to develop engagement with your followers. If you just plop up a bunch of social media stuff and then leave it there, it's not going to work. So you've got to be committed to engagement. Again, you can also build brand awareness and loyalty among your brands or among your brand. And part of that is making sure that even though you may be saying different things across different social media channels, make sure that you are being brand consistent across the channels. And so one of the things we help businesses with is establishing brand consistency and a core voice for their social media channels. This ties back into what I was saying a minute ago. So the key channels for customer complaints, this is a couple years old, and I suspect, I haven't seen a new version of this yet, but I suspect social media has probably grown even more. So more and more people are expecting to use social media for customer complaints. And if a brand ignores their social complaint, they're going to do it again, or they're going to try to contact you on another channel, or worse, they're going to boycott your brand. So you've got to be ready to handle customers online on social media. But if you respond well on social media, you're going to get rewarded for it. So if you handle a customer complaint well on social media, they're going to talk about it. They're going to post about the positive interaction, or they're going to share with their friends, or they're going to buy from the brand again, or they're going to tell their friends offline. So you cannot ignore customer complaints on social media. Another benefit of social media is you get increased traffic in your search rankings. So one of the things that Google looks at is how many links go back to a particular page on a website, and links back from social media will help. So you can also increase your website traffic and search rankings with social media. Also doesn't cost that much. You have to have a person to actually do the work, and you have to pay them, but it's not like buying an ad on television or buying a billboard on the freeway. So social media has a relatively low entry cost, and it's very easy to see what's working and what's not working. All right, I'm going to take you guys in the Wayback Machine for a minute. I suspect, so if you guys are all in college, most of you were probably born around or 1999 or the year 2000. Back then, this is how PR people did their work. They used phones, fax machines. This is what cell phones looked like, and PR people all carried beepers around. And this is what Google looked like in 1999. And at that time, there was practically no overlap between public relations and digital. Digital was very small. And when I started doing PR here in Houston around 1999, there was no opportunity to do anything on digital to communicate with reporters as a PR person. And now today, people still think that there's not a lot of overlap between digital and PR, but that's simply not the case. Really, nowadays, it looks like this. You cannot do PR or journalism without factoring in digital. There's such a huge overlap now that they are effectively inseparable. Now, they're not completely 100% overlapped, but there is a much, much greater overlap between public relations and digital these days. And the reason for that is that social media sites are huge pathways to news. So the percent of US adults who get news from Facebook is a shocking 52%. 28% get it from YouTube, 17% get it from Twitter, 14% get it from Instagram. So if you are involved in news in any way, whether as a journalist, a reporter, a PR person, a company, you cannot ignore social media in terms of how you manage your public relations. So the last thing, and then I'm going to wrap up in just a minute, is it's really important for you, if you're trying to figure out what's the right social media, how should I approach social media as an organization, as a nonprofit, as a business, as a company, as a retail establishment, choose and focus on the right network for you. There's a ton of different social media channels, but maybe you just want to be on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and that's okay. You don't have to be on every channel. And in fact, you probably shouldn't be unless you're a huge conglomerate like Nike or Real Madrid or Samsung. So, and here's I think maybe the most important slide. When we go through social media planning with our partners or with our clients, we start with their strategy and how it ties into their business goals. What are you trying to accomplish? At the end of the day, what are we trying to do to help your business be more successful, to make your nonprofit more successful, to make your school more successful? What are your business goals, and what is your strategy, and how does social media tie into that strategy? And then we figure out, well, who is your audience? If you're trying to reach younger people, we're probably going to recommend you explore things like Instagram or Snapchat. If you're trying to reach another business, we're probably going to recommend LinkedIn. And so it's super important to have a clear idea of who your audience is. And then from there, we develop the tactics. Okay, so we know what your business goals are. We know who you're trying to reach. What tactics should we use? Should we be doing a lot of video? Should we be doing more pictures? What hashtag should we be using? How often should we post? That kind of thing. So then we get really down to the specific tactics, and we get into the specific tactics for each channel. We also help our clients develop a voice. That gets back to the Dolly Parton slide, right? You should still have sort of a core message that's part of your brand, but you can talk about yourself a little bit differently on each channel. It's still all Dolly Parton, but Dolly is presenting herself just a little bit differently on each social media channel. And businesses, organizations, nonprofits, schools should do the same thing. There's still a core part of your voice that is the same, but the way you talk about yourself and the way you talk to your customers and the way you present yourself is going to be a little bit different on each social media channel. And then we figure out what are our goals and objectives. So what I mean by that is, okay, at the end of this month, if one of our goals is to grow followers, how many more followers do we want? We have 2,215 followers right now. At the end of March, do we want to be at 3,000, 3,500, or 5,000? So you need to have very clear goals and objectives because that helps you measure success and helps you adapt and adjust on the way. Remember the circle I showed you at the beginning with the analytics arrows going around? You're constantly measuring and constantly iterating and figuring out what worked, what didn't, what do I do differently, what do I do more of? And then you got to figure out what resources do you need. Do you want to hire somebody from inside to do all the social media work? Or do you want to hire an agency from the outside? Obviously, hiring somebody from the inside has an advantage because they're there, 40 hours a week working for you. But it's hard to find one person who can do graphics and write and do analytics and tie things back to the website and develop strategy. So oftentimes an agency is a better approach because you'll find an agency that has people who do all of those things, right? They don't have one person who does everything. They have 6 people. Each person specializes in one thing. So you may need to go outside your organization to get the resources you need for social media. And then the key thing is you got to have an editorial calendar. A lot of businesses are just sort of slapping stuff up on Twitter or Facebook when they think about it. You'll have such more success and you'll sleep much better at night if you're in charge of social media by having an editorial calendar that says, all right, I know I'm going to publish these 3 things on Facebook this week, those 4 things on Twitter, and those 2 things on Instagram. And you know in advance, and it just makes it a lot easier to manage. And then you need some monitoring and analytics tools. So I'm going to go real quick through Hootsuite, which is a tool that we use. Ooh, that's a terrible graphic. I need to fix that. Hootsuite is a scheduling, monitoring, and analytics tool that we use for all of our clients. It's very robust and it helps you stay on top of social media. One of their big competitors is Sprout Social. They're more or less the same. It's kind of like the difference between a Honda and a Nissan. They're both very good, both affordable, and it's just a matter of personal preference. And that is the end of my talk. So I will hand it back over to Dale and open up to questions.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Chris. It's always great to hear from other professionals, and especially when messages correlate and go well together. So many of the things you discussed are things that we talk with our students about. So it's always great to have that backup from professionals in the field. So thank you. We do have about 20 minutes for questions here. So if you have a question for Chris, please leave it in the chat. And our Mass Comm Week rep, Sydney, will get that over to me and I'll make sure and get that in. But while we're waiting for some student questions, I want to talk to you about 2020.
Oh, yeah.
So, the title of this was Digital Strategy in 2020, and 2020 has been a year unlike any other for many brands. What have you been seeing with your clients in terms of how the pandemic has affected strategy in general, and then particularly digital strategy. And I'm especially interested in your clients because you have a lot of healthcare clients.
Yeah.
So how are they handling things?
It really varies, but the overall trend I've seen and what we've been encouraging our clients to do is to double down on digital. So some of our clients turtled, right? They were like, oh my God, we don't know what to do. The country's falling apart. The economy's cratering. I can't get my employees in. And they just sort of withdrew and stuck their head in their shell. That's not the right approach. The successful clients, and that includes some of our technology and healthcare clients, have decided to double down on digital because the way most companies had been, let me rephrase that. A lot of companies were using digital to reach their customers in certain ways, but they were still counting on face-to-face meetings, people being out and about, and that's just, it's not working, it doesn't work the same way anymore. And so if you're trying to reach new customers or engage with your customers or do anything, it's more of that has moved online than even I expected. So that means people can't even come to your store anymore. So a lot of businesses have had to embrace curbside pickup or delivery or things like that. And that was happening in a lot of businesses anyway, but that's completely accelerated. A lot of customers want to have online conversations because everybody's on their computer all day, right? We're not driving around anymore, going to the office, having lunches. People are online all day. And so being able to engage with your customers online, whether it's on your social media channels or putting in one of those chat bots that you see in a lot of websites, those allow you to better handle the incoming customer service questions or concerns than trying to deal with it in person or on the phone. So and advertising is more and more important than ever as well. So Pierpont, we get most of our new customers by going to events, in and around Houston or Dallas or Austin. That's where our 3 main offices are. And, I'm glad handing out my business card, or I'm speaking at an event at the junior league or something like that. So that's all gone. And so we've had to move online to do things like this. And I was just on a podcast yesterday. So I've had to move sort of my public persona more online than it ever was before. Likewise, Pierpont has increased our own spending on online advertising. So in the past, we had spent around $8,000 a month on online advertising, almost exclusively on Google Ads. But since the pandemic started, we have slowly increased our spend on our Google Ads to now we're spending about $12,000. Actually, we're increasing it this month to $13,000 a month on Google Ads because we've seen the results. Now, it doesn't necessarily always mean you have to spend more money on digital ads. You may just need to be more efficient about it. But if anything, the pandemic, like I said, probably 3 times in the last 5 minutes, the pandemic and the reaction to it has accelerated the need to move online and to be better equipped online because everybody's online more than they ever have been, and they're expecting more responsiveness, more opportunities, more ways to do things online than ever before.
When we think about these trends, which ones do you see sticking around?
Mm-hmm.
Some things are a little bit more obvious than others, but what things do you see lasting beyond even 2021 when hopefully there's a vaccine and life returns to somewhat normal?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have gotten accustomed to curbside, and that's kind of a mundane thing. But curbside pickup and delivery I think are here to stay. I mean, I live near a little mall. It's like a 5-minute walk from my house, but the Best Buy recently went out of business. The Pier 1 went out of business. A couple of other retail establishments they're gone. And I think because more people are just buying stuff online rather than going out shopping. So I think curbside pickup and or delivery is going to accelerate. And I think people's expectations for being able to interact with your business online are going to accelerate as well. I mentioned sort of the online chat things you can install on your website. I think that's only going to grow because people are just increasingly used to dealing with businesses on their computer or on their phone. I guess that would be the other thing. So one trend is that a lot of things have moved to desktop. So I used to always beat the drum that you've got to make sure everything's done for mobile, but because everybody's kind of on their laptops all day, a lot of online traffic has shifted away from mobile onto laptops or desktops. But when the pandemic is over, or the vaccine is readily available, or whatever the combination of those two things is, then I think there will be a big swing back to phones. So there was this, most websites saw their mobile traffic doing this in the last couple of years, and their desktop traffic doing that. Now, mobile has either flatlined or fallen, and we've seen this on our own website, and desktop and laptop have done this. I think that's going to go back down again next year. So don't neglect mobile next year.
Yeah. One more question, and we have a question from students. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll see them. With regard to your healthcare clients in particular,
yes.
I know you probably can't get into specifics about things you're doing with them, but just in general, how has the healthcare industry and digital marketing, or marketing in general, been impacted over these last 10 or so months?
So unfortunately, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that a lot of businesses are turtling. Healthcare is turtling right now. Healthcare, the president is lying when he says that doctors make more money from COVID diagnoses. That is patently untrue. My wife works in the medical center still to this day. So the hospitals and the medical organizations are having a really tough time right now. And a lot of them have cut their digital budgets, or they've laid off their digital people. I have a lot of friends who used to work in the medical center, and a lot of them have been laid off over the last couple of months because the hospitals, they're not able to make their margins, right? Most hospitals are nonprofit, no margin, no mission, but their revenues are down so much because they can't do a lot of the elective procedures that keep them afloat. So a lot of these healthcare organizations are really hemorrhaging money, but unfortunately they're cutting their digital and their public relations budgets. So we've encouraged them not to, because we think that that's a mistake, but we understand that they need to cut somewhere. So that's unfortunately been what we've seen from most of our healthcare clients. And some of our healthcare clients dropped Pierpont at the beginning of the pandemic because they just couldn't. They said, we can't afford it.
Yeah, it's almost as if hospitals have become emergency rooms and nothing else.
Yeah.
Which we oftentimes don't think of how hospitals operate, but those elective surgeries or procedures are what would keep them going and be able to pay for the ER visits for someone who doesn't have insurance and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Jacob. He asks, it's kind of a two-part question. What does the future for social media look like? Are there social media sites that you think are going to die out within the next couple of years? Or what are you expecting to gain in popularity like TikTok's done in the past couple of years?
I think
kind of a loaded question. So
no, it's a great question.
No,
I love that question. So social media is going to become even more balkanized, meaning it's going to become even more fragmented, and people are going, there are new social media channels popping up all the time. So for example, there's a new kind of Twitter competitor. It's spelled parlor, but it's French word. So I think it could be pronounced parlay, but I think most people pronounce it parlor. Anyway, so Parler is sort of a Twitter competitor that is now being touted by, among others, President Trump, as an alternative to the, ultra liberal social media channels that are banning conservative voices. Now, Facebook has done no such thing. Twitter is trying to put labels on things that it deems factually inaccurate or dangerous. So a lot of right-wing conservative people are leaving Twitter or threatening to leave Twitter and set up shop at this place called, again, Parler or Parlay. And I think that's going to happen more and more. I think more and more, and this is really worrying to me, that they're going to be, it's kind of like, it's going to be like the cable TV universe. There's going to be all these different channels, and people are going to sort themselves into their tribes. And there's going to be even less interaction among people on social media. So I think that's bad for society, and it's hard for businesses, because you're going to need to decide, do I even want to be on something like Parler, which is really kind of the refuge of a lot of ultra-conservative people who have been kicked off of other social media platforms. And so you need to decide, do I want to try to pick every niche social media channel that's going to start bubbling up, or am I going to stay with sort of the mainstream ones? And are the mainstream ones going to no longer be mainstream? I don't think any of those social media channels is going to go away anytime soon, but I think Facebook is in a lot of danger in like 20 years of being kind of a dinosaur. Not in 5 years, but younger people just aren't going onto Facebook. And that's why they acquired Instagram. And that's why they bought WhatsApp. because they're trying to keep their audience young. So I think Facebook will eventually wither away and die, but maybe not for 20 years.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to think about. I like to use the term balkanization, dating back to geopolitical history, but
I was a political science major in college. I can't help it.
But that splitting off not only from an audience perspective, which is what you're mentioning with Parler and Twitter as an example, but also with a content perspective. We've now got the video platforms, we've got the images platforms, we've got the text, for lack of a better word, Facebook and Twitter platforms. So brands also have to keep that in mind in terms of the content they're creating. And where they want to go with it. So you mentioned that, YouTube obviously takes a lot more time and money to produce content. How do y'all walk your clients through the different types of content options they have in terms of deciding what platforms they're going to be on?
Yeah, it often just comes down to resources. So if you have the resources to produce high quality videos, then the nice thing about videos is that videos can be leveraged on every platform, right? Twitter is primarily text. Facebook is a lot of text as well, but if you have a good video, you can repurpose it on all the platforms. So if you have the resources to invest in high quality, awesome videos, do it, because videos tend to perform the best almost across all channels. But again, as you mentioned, Dale, they're more labor intensive, they're more expensive to do well. Again, but it's easier. Like I said before, you can produce a pretty good video just with your iPhone or your Android device. So I think I lost track of what your question was, though.
No, you got to it, I promise. Have any of your clients been, speaking of performance of content types, live is, kind of king of the algorithm right now on Facebook for who knows how long. Are any of your clients, particularly healthcare clients, utilizing live as any part of their strategies right now?
Healthcare clients are very reluctant to use live because there are so many pitfalls when you're talking about medical information online. So for example, you cannot release, because of HIPAA, you cannot release any patient information. So if you are doing something live and you accidentally say, oh, I have this patient named Bill and he's got ALS, that's a huge problem, right? You can't do that. Likewise, doctors are also very cautious about the fine line between talking about general health advice and specific healthcare advice. So if a doctor is saying, if you're doing something live and somebody says, oh, I've got this pain in my back and what should I do about it? The doctor can say, well, typically for back patients, we do these sorts of things. But if that's interpreted as medical advice and then the person does it and it doesn't work, or they get injured worse or something like that, that's really perilous. And so we actually don't do a lot of Facebook Live with healthcare clients, and we're super cautious about putting content out related to healthcare. So we hardly ever do anything live with our healthcare clients.
Have you done that in any of the other sectors that your clients work in?
We don't do a lot of live. Again, a lot of our clients, they're not as in areas as sensitive as healthcare, but no, we don't do a lot of live stuff. There's just so much.
A lot can go wrong.
A lot can go wrong. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of downside to doing things live. We've done a couple of webinars with some of our clients, but what we found is that what we do for webinars is we record the webinar ahead of time, and then I'll frequently be the host of the webinar. I'll say, hey, I'm Chris Ferris from Pierpont. We're a partner of this company, and now we're going to show you this webinar for 20 minutes. And then we show the video because we've already recorded it. And so the result is the same. Like, I could have recorded my talk today and just pushed play. I didn't, but so we are doing some live stuff, but again, we find there's so much downside to doing things live, especially with big corporations, that oftentimes recording it and then showing it is safer.
Yeah, a lot more comfortable to do it.
Yeah. Plus, sometimes just things go wrong. Like my video hasn't conked out today, but when I was teaching in the spring, one time my Zoom just bombed out in the middle of class. And so I had to reboot my computer. And in the meantime, I had to dial in on my phone to tell the students what had happened. And so doing things live, not just message wise, there are a lot of pitfalls, but technology wise, there are a lot of pitfalls.
Yeah. We've got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to ask
Okay.
you a big question. I'm sure many of the students in the room want to hear. What skills should they be working on right now as they prepare to apply for internships or jobs at companies like Pierpont?
We do have an internship program at Pierpont. I would encourage you all to go to our website, peercom.com. In fact, I'll put it in the chat. We have great interns, and we recruit interns from all over the country. Most of them tend to come from Texas, but we do have a few interns from elsewhere, and we are big fans of interns. So let me do that right now. All right, I'm putting this in the chat. And in fact, I just did a webinar about a month ago, which I will also put a link to in a minute, in which I and two other folks from the Houston marketing community, we were interviewed for about an hour about what kinds of skills we're looking for in employees. And for me, it's about an hour. I'll put the link in a minute. But for me, the biggest thing is flexibility. PR, the way people do PR today is not super different from the way people did PR a couple of years ago. The tools are different, right? Rather than beepers and faxes, you're using email and cell phones. But like the fundamental skills you need to be good at PR are more or less the same they were when I started, 20 or 25 years ago. But if you want to get into digital, whether it's social media or SEO or digital marketing or any part of it, is you have to be flexible and you have to have a very, very strong sense of curiosity because it changes all the time. And if you get locked into sort of one lane and say, well, all I know how to do is post on Facebook, that may be great if that's what your particular job is in that moment, but that may shift. You may need to pivot to producing videos for Instagram or picking the right hashtags for Twitter or something else. So have as wide a scope of skills and interests as possible. That includes graphics, writing, analytics, all those things. There's a great book that I recommended in the webinar that I talked about called, and I can never remember the name of this book. It's called, Range, that's what it is. And I'm gonna put a link to that. This is an excellent book that I read last year. And he makes the point that people are more successful longer term, the more range they have. So if you specialize in something, that's great, but long term, it's not going to serve you as well as having a range of skills. So that's the Range book. And then let me put in the...
While you're looking for the webinar,
yeah,
I'll just echo that of, I love using the example that Evan Smith, the CEO of the Texas Tribune, uses when he talks about, and there's an issue with the chat. I'm getting some messages that the chat links aren't coming through. What I'll do is we'll make sure and post the links on the Mass Comm website.
They wound up going to Courtney, sorry.
Okay, yeah, the chat's been acting weird today. So yeah, if you could post those to everyone, that would be great.
Yeah, okay.
I will sell them to the highest bidder. Thank you.
There you go. Now I'm seeing the links. If you don't mind sharing the Pierpont one as well. Evan Smith describes it as he wants Swiss Army knives.
Yes.
He wants people who can do a little bit of a lot of things, or a little bit of a lot of things, and then they can train you to do more of something that you already know a little bit on, rather than one person who is solely focused on one thing, because then they're going to have to teach you everything that comes along with that. And so you're kind of in that same line as Evan Smith. We have 1 minute left, so I'll ask you one more quick question, and that is, networking is obviously a key component of finding a job these days, and it's a key component of a business, finding new clients. So how have y'all seen the application process and the recruitment process change now that we're doing it all digitally and virtual?
It's harder and easier. For example, if I were to have spoken at your conference last year, I would have had to got in my car, drive up to San Marcos, and done it all in person. Now I can do it from my office in my home. So I haven't stepped foot in the office more than 10 times since the pandemic began. And so the ability to be more places and get in front of lots of people is so much easier now because you don't have to physically travel anywhere. And so that's, again, it's a plus and a minus. I prefer doing these sorts of things in person. I can read the room better, and tell if people are interested in something or if they didn't understand something. But like I said, there is a benefit to being able to just jump on my Zoom and see all of you 36 people in the virtual room here. And that's what we've had to do with Pierpont, is that I'm trying to be more visible on things like this, doing the webinar I recorded yesterday, the podcast I recorded yesterday, doing the webinar that I put the link in the chat a few minutes ago. So you just have to adapt. It's kind of like what you were saying, you got to be a Swiss Army knife. I was not a Zoom, I'd never used Zoom before 6 months ago, but I figured it out, and I know how to do breakout rooms, and I know how to put things in the chat, and how to use the Q&A. And so you got to be adaptable and be creative and flexible.
Yeah, well, that's all great advice, and we are at 12 o'clock, so we don't want to hold you too much longer,
Okay.
but thank you so much for sharing your insight and your stories from Pierpont and everything you've learned along the way. And I think it was a great message for the students. I hope they enjoyed it as well. So we'll be having many more students watch this. There were many sessions going on at the same time, so a lot are going to be watching it on video. So
okay.
You might be getting LinkedIn invites over the coming days. So
yep, and I just put my LinkedIn profile in the chat as well. So there's a lot of links in this chat.
And we'll make sure and share those with them as well. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe you can put them in an email to everybody or something like that, because I know that once the Zoom call goes away, ends, the chat disappears.
I will copy them and move them over. But thank you so much, Chris, Dr. Ferris. And again, connect with Chris on LinkedIn. Make sure you mention that you were part of this talk so he knows to accept you. And
yes,
that's a great way to start your networking that we just ended on. So thanks again, Chris, and appreciate you being a part of Mass Comm Week.
Thanks, Dale. It was my pleasure, and I really am grateful y'all invited me. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank y'all, and thank y'all for attending too.